Test. 1, 2, 3.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear us? That's the most important question. OBS setup is hard. We do it not often enough. Okay, you guys can hear us. That's great. So let's start with the official live stream for the Gateway release and 10 years of Prosperous Universe. Today we want to talk a bit about 10 years of Prosperous Universe development, obviously. We want to talk about the Gateway release, but maybe not too much, as one would expect. We want to talk about upcoming features and a bit about the next 10 years. We are very positive that we'll be here in 10 years to come. So let's get started. For everyone not knowing us, or for everyone who hasn't yet seen a live stream of us, in the upper right is Martin, the founder of Simulogix. And
Hello.
in the top left corner is Fabian. He's our game systems designer. He's responsible for all the game designs, some UI designs, balancing and all that stuff. And I'm Molb. I'm the programmer right now with a few extra tasks at hand, like marketing and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do people know your actual name, or are you just known as Molb?
I'm not sure. I think in the devlogs it also says Michi. It says Michi and
I
Molb.
think it's Michi. Yeah. I think so too.
All right. Over the last few days, we collected some questions you guys have, but please, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many questions as it's possible. And let's dive right into it. Let's start with 10 years of Prosperous Universe. We have written a devlog, and there was a bit of a confusion about the devlogs because which devlog actually coincides with 10 years of Prosperous Universe. And Martin and I and Fabian also, we talked a bit about that. And it's not that easy to find the one date where it actually began, because Martin and I talked about the project way before the first commit in the codebase, for example. And the first commit in the codebase wasn't actually the first commit. It was more of a reset of an existing Prosperous Universe. Martin will tell you more about that in a second. And
I don't think it was the same project, was it?
It was the same project.
But we might have done a few prototypes before. I don't know.
Yeah.
One would have to do a somewhat closer inspection of the Git repository and look for old remnants.
Since there's no set date, now is as a good time as any other in the general area, like fall 2025.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So the story behind the devlogs. Why is it? We started the devlogs as a personal journal, really, right, Martin? When we started working on Prosperous Universe, because we wanted to kind of keep track of what we were doing and what we were thinking about the project and where it should go, and just started to write them, and then decided we could as well publish them in our blog to have very first content for the game, so to speak.
Yeah, I think I mean it's 10 years, right? So memory is a bit vague, but I think there were various reasons for doing it. I think one was self-motivation. I think it wasn't even so much about documenting things. It was more about, since we were only 2 people in I think back then we actually shared an office, because Michi would always come to my place and we would sit in my small office and work from there. I think it was mostly about self-motivating.
That as well, yeah.
Well, self-motivation and sort of kind of, okay, it's Friday or it's Monday, and now what can we write up about what we've done over the past week, and did we make progress? So I think that helped. I think that the very moment we started to release them, it was also about kind of not showing progress to ourselves, but showing progress to everyone else. Because, I mean, obviously, we knew that we were trying to do something that would be incredibly hard to do, especially in terms of gaining the required amount of players. And so starting early with something to have content on our website and sort of to show anyone who would end up on our website that we were actually working on this continuously, I think was the main motivation. Even though massively overpowered, it's one of those massive multiplayer online game websites in a traditional sense, like a news portal. I think they were supporting us from the very beginnings, but I think they became bored of the devlogs at some point. In one of their news posts, they wrote somewhat I don't know, what did they write? Something about the devlogs are.
I think they're too technical.
Horribly boring or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. It's fine. I think they're really intended for people who like keep track of it and read the issue every week. I think if you were to sit down and read all 500 of them in one sitting, that would make for a dreadful read.
Yeah. All right. A lot has happened in the last 10 years, right? And not only 500 devlogs, but also we're right now in the 8th universe. So we had a couple of alpha tests in the beginning, and they were usually, in the beginning they have all been closed and invite only. And but I find it fascinating that we only had 8 restarts so far. Doesn't seem. That's less than one per year.
That was not planned. That was not planned.
Yeah, but
and arguably, it's not a good thing either. I think it's. I mean, how long is the current universe going on?
Over 1,700 days.
Okay,
it's like
for
4 or 5
math.
years.
Math, it is there. I was about to ask. So, I mean, we're approaching a date in the future where the current universe is basically half of the time the project has existed.
It's true, yeah, that could happen pretty soon.
And that's sort of, I mean, the no one dares to say the R word, and at this point, it's like we were. I mean, when the current iteration started, like all the ones before it, the plan was actually to have it run for a while to figure stuff out and then reset again to iterate, right? But this one worked too well in a sense, so now we're sort of stuck with all of that stuff. I mean, the code base is littered with these little markers, like comments that say alpha 9 remove, or alpha 9 fix, or alpha 9 this is obsolete. But it has to stay in there right now because it's some hack that it was required to make something work in the current alpha. And I have a feeling that these might stick around for a bit longer.
Yeah. Someone asked how many commits we have in the code base. Actually, it's at least 2 projects. We have the client and the server part, and then there's the auxiliary systems like account systems and stuff like that. And actually, I've never counted.
Let me check. I don't know if I can see it right there. I mean that the server has 4,500 commits roughly, and the client has 5,000 commits roundabout. Yeah.
All right.
So 10,000 something. Not quite, but close. Which doesn't mean anything, right? It's like lines of codes or amount of commits is really it's not a metric for anything. So, yeah, but I mean that's the current iteration. As Michi already hinted at, there were at least 2 prototypes before the current generation that we worked on, or that I worked on rather. Because I mean, Michi joined around 10 years ago. That was sort of the official start that we're celebrating now, because that's when it became serious. But if you look at the logo, for example, the yellow rock logo, that was actually designed probably 2 or 3 years earlier, when I already tried doing something like this, but on my own. And that's sort of failed for all sorts of reasons, for good reasons, actually. I think it was, at the end of the day, it was a good thing that it ended or failed, because as many first attempts, this wasn't a very good one.
How long did you
And there
work
was
on it?
a
How long did you work on it?
I don't know, actually. I think it was honestly, I have no idea. It went on the side, like I did it on the side, of course, and it must have gone on for several months at least. I even had external designers involved in the project back then, who unfortunately were not not really the right fit. But I mean, that's a completely different story. Like, finding the right designers for our project has always been a bit of a challenge. I mean, that's maybe also something that we can touch on in a minute. But yeah, I mean, it was a sort of working prototype, because, to be honest, like, if you just building a system where you can sort of trade stuff on an exchange and then do a bit of production and stuff, that's, you can get those basics working fairly quickly. But I mean, that system back then was not, it wouldn't have scaled. That was one thing, like, for technical reasons, but also from the way the whole UI worked and everything, it was a completely different thing to what we have today. Yeah, and there was another sort of related project that sort of went into in a similar direction vision-wise than Prosperous Universe, but I worked on it with another friend back in the days, and he had a much more, let's say, commercial interest in this whole project, and so the two of us never really found common ground for that project, because, as you know, I'm a bit of a idealist when it comes to the business model of Prosperous Universe and Similogics. So I mean, we're still friends. We get along very well, but we didn't make a good team to develop a game. But yeah, that was a small thing, maybe a few weekends. Some cool ideas in there, but nothing that stuck. Yeah.
No.
So the real thing started 10 years ago with Michi on a flip chart that I can look at when I look across my office here. Yeah, I think I'm not using it much these days, and I think some of the very first drafts of individual bits and pieces of Prosperous Universe are still on there, folded over, covered with drawings from my kids.
So right now we're in early access, right? Are we ever going to leave early access?
Actually, I'm talking so much I can't follow the chat. But yeah. So who are you asking? Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Someone says Martin is significantly louder than Michi.
I adjusted the volume a bit. I hope it's better now.
Okay. But I'm just the louder type, I guess. No, sorry, what was the question again? Early access.
Early access. Why things are so moving so slowly? But
why things are moving so slowly? I mean,
it's because we have lots of plans, right?
We have a lot of plans and not a lot of manpower.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we have to sort of. I mean, since we're currently in the let's talk about the past 10 years part of the live stream, maybe we can kind of explain that really quick as a reminder of kind of who we are, or how the studio works, or how it did work, or how it developed. And I mean, the key thing to know is that Prosperous Universe is the second game of Simulogix. Like, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with our little business, but we have another game called Airline Sim that's been going on for 22 years. Like, it has a little bit of a head start over Prosperous Universe. And this game, the other game, is one of the reasons why we're even able to do Prosperous Universe in the first place. So when we started 10 years ago, I was freelancing for someone, or for the company of someone who I founded Airline Sim with. So I was running Airline Sim, I was running this freelancing gig, and I think back then we had, I don't know, we had, I think, one employee already, part-time, a support agent for Airline Sim, basically. And then I sort of made that gamble and said to Michi, hey, come on, I have this idea. We had a couple of other ideas, but they got scrapped. Do you want to sit down with me and work on this? And then fortunately he agreed. And then I started sort of paying whatever I could afford to keep Michi on board, which initially wasn't all that much, basically from these other sources of cash that we had. And then eventually, so I mean, there were basically two things that happened over the following years. One is that I basically increased my freelancing engagement to sort of generate more cash for this project. And the other thing is that we received funding. And for Prosperous Universe, we actually received public funding twice. And that, on the one hand, helped us tremendously because we were able to hire more people, like, for quite some time. And you remember these people, right? Most of these, I guess. So Nick, for example, we had for marketing, and we had Manoj, who did the mobile design, for example. He unfortunately only was with us for this initial funding period, because that was sort of the caveat here. These public funding projects, they're very, very, how do you call it? They have very tight constraints, both in terms of content and in terms of how long they can last, or how long they are allowed to go on. And we had these tremendous plans of what we want to achieve within that period of, I think, 1.5 years or so. I think the first funding phase was. And we had these back of a napkin sort of calculations about how many active players we would need to kind of sustain the team that we were able to build up because we received the funding. And as you all know, nothing of that ever materialized, right? So we made some progress, and there are definitely things that came out of that we sort of take for granted today, or that we have, and that we wouldn't have if we didn't have that funding. But sadly, the game was just too niche, or is too niche, and our marketing budget nowhere near where it would have to be for the player numbers to grow to a size that would sustain a bigger team. So long story short, why am I telling you all of this is that at the end of the day, it's Michi and myself doing all the development work. And for a long time, that was primarily focused on Prosperous Universe. And as I said earlier, none of this would be possible without the other game, Airline Sim. And to be perfectly honest, I neglected that other title for quite some time over that 10-year period. I think there was at least half a decade or so where Airline Sim basically just we kept it in maintenance mode, more or less. Like, we didn't put in any serious development effort because there was just no resources. And I mean, that ended for various reasons. And there's another video over on the Airline Sim channel that you can check out if you want. Lots of personal reasons for why, but I sort of stopped doing freelance work altogether about 2 years ago, I would say. And since then, I'm completely focused on Airline Sim, or not completely, but more or less focused on Airline Sim and running the company itself. And Michi is the sole person doing development on Prosperous Universe with the help of Fabian in the game design department. And that's the very long, convoluted explanation for why everything is taking so long. Because at the end of the day, both Michi and myself, we're dads, we have kids, we have family, we have partners that want to work as well, and so we're not technically working for me, it's a bit of there's no document that says how much I have to work, but it's definitely not full time. Michi's not working full time officially, and then if you do the math, like you don't have a full work week, but you have to do all the things that come with running a game, which is operations, which is support, which is in my case, it's also all the legal stuff or admin stuff, all of these things. There is the occasional live stream, like we have the devlogs want to be written. All of these things, they're basically done by us, and there's no external paid party at this point, except for accountants that help with these things. So that's why everything takes a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Did I forget about something important along the way? I don't think so.
No, but you just have been talking about player numbers and how it's our goal since the very beginning to grow them. And one question we received was, how does the player base look like, or how big is it? And I just checked the numbers today, and right now we have about 4,000 monthly active players. That's where we stand right now. Before the colony ship release, it has been around 3,200 or so. So numbers increased, but since the colony ship release is just like a month or so in the past, usually those numbers slowly go down again. That's just as it is, and it's kind of very difficult because we have to provide new content, do things, so the player numbers go up and the game keeps being interesting for existing players, so they don't drop out. And at the same time, we have to kind of get as many new players into the game as possible. And of course, new content is always a good option for that. Other things are marketing in the broad sense, or YouTube, sponsored YouTube videos do work relatively well for us as well. But there are not as many channels as one would think where Prosperous Universe is a fit, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, I mentioned the funding earlier, and I think that the first funding round, which was, I guess, sort of an experiment on the federal government side as well, had extremely good terms, because I think that they gave us 70% of project costs they took over. So we basically had to chip in 30% and they paid 70%, non-refundable. Like it was just money you got and that's it. And it also had this term that you were allowed to do marketing. And I remember that we spent, I think, $7,000 on a single YouTuber once. What's his face again? I forgot the name,
but it's the long hair, right?
Yeah, the long-haired science YouTuber
Kyle Hill.
Kyle, yeah, something like that. And that sort of thing, like it brought an incredible spike in signups. Like it was a serious spike that went up, but it went down just as quickly. And we did have a lasting effect from it, definitely. Like we had a low level sort of before and a slightly less low level after. But sort of generating these spikes, it's very cash intensive, which is something that we cannot afford at the moment, like, or never really could, besides this short glorious time window in which we had this particular funding program going on. But I mean, we've I mean, maybe that's also one thing that we have to add for context here, is that the reason it is that way is in large parts because of how we, or and myself, of course, have decided to run this business. And that is, like, we don't want to have external investors, because most investors are looking for return on investment, right? So they put in their money, but they want to get out the maximum return, which in the case of online games typically means squeeze as much money out of your player base as you can, which is something that we don't want to do. Loans are obviously an extremely risky thing, because first of all, no bank is going to give them to you without sort of a personal guarantee. Like, sure, on paper the company gets the money, but at the end of the day, when everything fails, it's myself that has to pay them back. And finding a third party that is compatible and has the long-term interest and the will to spend money on marketing and stuff, like a publisher that could work with a game like ours. I mean, we never really dared to look for one, but I have a strong feeling that it would be very, very hard to find one. And that means that the whole project is bootstrapped. It's organic growth only, besides these public funding things, which are a big exception because they do have the caveats. But at the end of the day, there's no creative influence on the project. And we just get the money. So that's why we did it. But outside of that, basically, we run the whole business based on the cash flow our games generate. Like, there is no, at this point in time, there is no additional revenue stream, no source of money besides what payers pay us. Yeah, and that explains a lot of things. Like, the lack of,
yeah.
yeah.
I
Go ahead.
asked a question regarding cash flow. Are we having any plans for private servers like in Airline Sim, or not?
No.
Not for Prosperous Universe, right? Because
No.
it's a game that is supposed to be or exist in one universe, and I think most of the fun comes from a living universe, and I think private servers would be too small to have the same experience.
Yeah, and if anything, if they sort of reach any sort of noticeable size, I mean, I have no idea how these exclusive worlds would work in the context of Prosperous Universe. In Airline Sim, it's done in a way that they are very limited in the amount of players that are allowed to play on them. In part because we don't want to have these private game worlds start kind of cannibalizing the regular game worlds. And I could see something similar happen with Prosperous Universe, right? If another universe grows too big, then the other one or ones might suffer.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to kind of give you a number, like when we were doing these calculations for the first round of funding, I think we were anticipating, or we were hoping for, numbers around 30 to 50,000 active players. I think that was kind of that was the dimension that we were like kind of hoping for, naively, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on to the next topic? Like, for example, the gateway release and things to come in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, if there's no other questions on the past 10 years, which I think, I mean, we've written up stuff about the past 10 years, and there's going to be more content in that vein coming. So I guess we covered that sufficiently.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing we want to talk about is the gateway release and things to come in the near future. And maybe I can give a quick status of today's release. This morning I started the release, and as usual, something goes wrong. I mean, we do test it locally, we test it on the test server, and once it hits production, stuff happens, things break. And but luckily, nothing major so far. The first problem I encountered was a persistence problem with the database, where some data could not be loaded. And it didn't affect all players, so we could have just go with it and let it run and players join again. But in the end, usually the general performance of the game degrades if some entities, like companies or so, cannot be loaded. So I decided to restart the server a couple of times to figure out where the problem is, and we still have some issues, but at least that problem is fixed. And for example, the leaderboards are broken. I have to look into that tomorrow. And what else? Sometimes the players can't start the game and have to refresh a couple of times. I have an idea where the problem is coming from, but I wasn't able to solve it tomorrow. So that's good.
Silver Star says prod servers are always cursed.
Yeah.
We just mentioned this is still technically an alpha, and that's been going on for too long. So there's a lot of dead bodies hidden in various corners.
That's true. Okay, Fabian, do you want to give a quick intro what the gateways are about?
Yeah, sure. So the gateways are a new way to connect systems, basically. That's doesn't rely on the pre-designed FTL connections on the map. So you basically set up a gateway in one place and then another place, and then they have to both link to each other. So the owners of the gateway have to specify where the gateway links. And if both gateways link to each other, then you establish the connection, and then you need to provide a few more things, like fuel, for example. We have a new special type of fuel that's needed for gateway jumps. But if the gateways are running and connected, then you can use them with your ships, basically, and they function just like an FTL connection would, basically, but yeah, they can cover longer distances if the gateway is upgraded enough to do so, and they can make connections where there were none before, so kind of build your own shortcuts basically on the universe map. And yeah, the big idea with this was that that players can kind of leave their mark on the universe map and create new connections and structures that weren't there before, and thereby maybe enable new kinds of supply chains and trading and all that kind of stuff, basically. So yeah, it was that was basically the reason why we chose this as the first type of big space infrastructure that we put into the game, because there's a lot of potential with it, and it affects many things in the game in interesting ways. And yeah, it seemed like a good candidate as the first type of infrastructure. We had some other ideas for other infrastructure, and we'll probably get to those in the future. But yeah, the gateways won, basically.
Yeah. And there has been some confusion about how gateways work. I've seen it in Discord and I think in the chat as well, but you have to place them in pairs, right? That's the way they work. So you set up one gateway at one planet and another gateway at another planet, and then the government can actually create the link with the
And
motion.
within a certain radius
Yeah.
from each other. Yeah.
But if you want to have a chain of gateways, then you'll have to, for example, if you want to have 2 gateway jumps, then you actually need 4 because they work in pairs.
Yeah.
You cannot have, the middle gateway cannot have 2 links. One gateway has only 1 link.
It's a very complex technology. They can't just change their target all the time.
No Chevron business going on.
And
Is that what they're called in English? Because I think my Stargate references are very old, and I'm pretty sure I watched that stuff in
yeah,
German.
I think they're calling it chevrons, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think I looked that up for gateway, for devlog title actually.
Oh, okay, I
Anyway.
see.
And gateways are basically the first kind of mega project we have, right? The other infrastructure projects, or what we call now planetary infrastructure, is way smaller. Like it's not comparable with a local market.
Oh.
But the gateways are basically just the first instance of infrastructure. So that's also why it took us a bit longer than one would anticipate to implement such a feature, because the underlying game mechanics of managing infrastructure have to have laid out as well, and gateways are just an instance of that basically. And the plans with the infrastructure are a bit bigger than just having gateways. So basically a planetary government can now create and manage infrastructure projects, and for example the way it works is basically they decide in a motion that they want to create an infrastructure, say gateway, and then they source out all the construction work to a contractor basically, and then that contractor gains access to a construction store, and once the materials are all in place, the actual infrastructure can be built. And infrastructure also requires upkeep, and that upkeep can also be managed by the government. But since governments cannot have inventory per se, they have to outsource that as well to a contractor. And all these systems we had to build earlier, so we can build upon them and finally implement the gateways. And the ultimate goal here is, of course, to have more than just gateways as infrastructure projects. And there's several game design documents, at least a handful or 2, with ideas of future infrastructure projects. And you're laughing, Martin?
I am. Because I mean, it's definitely something that I'm going to touch on because I can't help myself.
Okay.
Towards the end of the stream when we're talking about like future vision and stuff like that. But I mean, the way infrastructure works is definitely influenced by how I. Like, I mean, as I said before, I'm focusing on airlines in these days, but I'm still calling myself the visionary. I sort of make the Fabian's and Michi's life difficult by giving them my ideas. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that this infrastructure that Michi has built now for the infrastructure is super abstract. Like it's I can remember a few flowcharts that Fabian prepared a long time ago, where we thought about these infrastructure projects like in the most general sense, like how, because the thing is, what we wanted to achieve was to have infrastructure in the game, but not, at least not in the long run, force infrastructure to be run in one particular way. Like at the moment, all these infrastructure projects are kicked off by a government and then implemented by a private entity. But we always wanted to have this, or we always thought about having this, having the means of making this open to the players as well. Like, for example, in the future, maybe a corporation could build something like this completely on their own without any government involvement. But at the same time, we wanted to have this politics aspect in it, even if it was private. So there's so many things that we thought about and looked into and implemented. Like I don't even have a 100% overview of which bits and pieces of this whole complex thing are now actually implemented in code, because we had to cut the scope somewhere. But yeah, it's it turned out to be slightly bigger than what we originally planned.
That's true.
Yeah, so.
But it's nice to have it in place now. And
yes.
Yeah, as I said, we have many ideas for future infrastructure projects. For example, I think the roadmap lists a few, right? We talked about space elevators, we talked about beacons. Beacons is a similar idea like gateways, where you could essentially, I think the idea was to make FTL travel faster, right? Or at least,
Yeah, the idea is that it makes the FTL jumps more accurate, basically, so they end up closer to the planet and shorten
the
time you
approach,
need to reach the planet, and or also the time you need to fly away from the planet, because you can just jump from the beacon, basically. And yeah, this shortens the starting and the ending steps of your flight, basically.
Yeah. And the other day when I was repairing buildings in my base, I thought there has to be an infrastructure for that, like a maintenance depot where a government can run like a specific, or especially a storefront that's tinkered towards repairing base buildings. So that would be nice.
I told you guys, this thing you're talking about is called a port. It's called a port. Yes, and then it has these different things where you can do stuff to ships and with ships. Yeah. One of these days.
Yeah, someone says it's called R-Prune. That's right. Refined Prune does lots of these things, but at some point we have to implement a few things in the base game as well. We cannot rely on R-Prune forever. A few things we have to implement ourselves.
Yeah, someone mentioned here earlier, what was it? Is there any plan on making joining a corporation better? Like, for example, making prices and contracts between people in a corporation discounts, etc. I mean, this is one of the things we just talked about recently, I think, about this very topic. Because, I mean, one of the, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but I think one main side effect of this whole politics and infrastructure stuff that we've built is that now we actually have a government context in the game, which is something that didn't exist before. And I think internally, we typically always talk about these contexts in the sense of accounting. Now the government has its own accounting. That's the main thing. So they have their own pots of money. But it's actually so much more than that. The government context can do so many things. Some of them are general, some of them are specific to the government, but there's really no reason other than our time constraints to go ahead and say, hey, why not add a corporation context, for example, so the corporation could actually become an actual active entity within the game that has some special features, or maybe an ownership structure, or different rules of how it's managed or controlled. But yeah, that's definitely something that could be done.
Yeah. Someone said I shouldn't be a noob and play with R-Prune or use Xit Act, and that's true, but it's an active decision. I don't want to play with any extensions, so I don't lose the sight how the game actually feels for someone just joining the game, for example, or how the game looks in vanilla, so to speak. And once you're used to all the features that Prune gives, I think I too wouldn't turn it off anymore. So yeah, it's really a great addition to the game. But I can't risk getting addicted to it. I need to stay professional.
Yeah, so are there any more questions about this particular release today before we start moving into near and far future developments? Like, are there any questions on the chat right now concerning gateways or infrastructure in general or politics? You name it. Just add Prune to the main game. That would fix the issue. I mean, someone else earlier in the chat, I think it flew by, mentioned that why don't we open up the code base to external developers? And it's a tempting thought, but yeah, it has a lot of pros and cons, right? And I mean, just adding Prune to the game is probably would be basically that, right? Like taking in volunteer contributions to the code base. I'm not ruling out that something like this might happen in the future, but at the same time, all the compensation and copyright and similar issues that arise from that are, again, something that our very, very small team would have to deal with. And it's all fun and games as long as volunteers do volunteer things on their own terms. But from my 20 plus years experience with game development and their games in their communities, basically, is that as soon as a project relies on the volunteer work, there is pressure and there's expectations, and then things usually go sour very quickly, or it doesn't work out anymore. So I am very, very cautious in that regard. Yeah. Which, again, like, not ruling out anything, and I think we all know that the Prosperous Universe community is kind of must be one of the best gaming communities out there. So things might look and work differently here, but not quite ready to endeavor or to try such an endeavor. Maybe I have to sit down with Michi and a few drinks to discuss those things.
All right, let's move on to the near future features we want to implement and what's planned, what's expected to happen next. And the short answer is we're not so sure yet. We started working, or Fabian started working on a game design document about faction influence, and we collected lots of feedback. And maybe Fabian, you can tell a bit about it.
Yeah, so the idea behind faction influence concept was basically to give factions a bit more identity and introduce a layer above the current planet politics that is system-wide and ultimately faction-wide, and that would basically incorporate everyone into the politics of the game and not just the governing players as it is currently. And yeah, what the idea basically was is that the factions are not static on the map anymore, but you can take over systems and sort of color them in your faction's color. and with that brings certain advantages to new systems. Now, what the original concept also had was, of course, the conflict between factions. So the faction influence would, or other factions that were not currently the faction of a system, could try to overwhelm the influence that was currently reigning in a system and take it over. So that would flip the faction affinity of a system, basically. And that could, of course, be rather annoying for players in that system, especially if it comes with currency changes and changes of certain headquarter benefits that they got, that they relied on. And yeah, it was, it met mixed feedback, I would say, to put it nicely, in the forums. Yeah, because also I think that Prosperous Universe has grown a pretty cooperative player base in general. Like, there's lots of cooperative elements, and players generally want to help each other and help other players grow as well. And like, kind of everyone, the economy as a whole is supposed to grow, and the competitive aspects are not so in the forefront, basically. And yeah, so that was a major point of feedback, which is why we are now reworking the concept to focus more on the cooperative side of things, basically. And we still want to have the taking over systems, but it will mostly be about the neutral systems, so you can bring your faction to factionless systems, and it'll be a bit more about spreading and holding influence over those systems. So that will be kind of like a PvE challenge, more or less. And really, like, flipping one faction to another faction would only be possible indirectly if one faction abandons the system, basically, and it becomes neutral again, and then another faction might jump in later. So that's a major point we are reworking, and also we want to tie a few more special kinds of benefits to bringing lots of faction influence into a system, and enable the faction councils, which are basically the new system-wide governing entity, to hand out options for new kinds of things in the game. Like, we haven't really decided upon them yet, but things that are on the table are kind of like incorporating the grants that some players run manually right now, or some corporations, to turn them into faction grants, basically, to help players out. And yeah, we have some wild ideas on the table, like terraforming planets and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not decided yet.
And that's exactly the reason why I said we don't know what's coming immediately after the Gateway release, because there's some serious work to do and decisions to be made how that feature should really look like. And from the sounds of it, it's going to be a rather large feature. But do not fear, we have lots of smaller features on the list that might be implemented when Fabian and the whole team discusses how to move forward with faction influence.
Just stay in the theme of this live stream, like, we're celebrating 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just for a little bit of added context here, this must be the toughest game design nut that we have to crack in this project. Because when Michi and I started 10 years ago, it was definitely planned to have military conflict in the game. Like we were considering all sorts of options about how it would work. So it's like the general spirit of an economy first or economy simulation first type of game would be maintained. So we always had this idea that there would be military conflict, but your personal structures would never be affected by that. You would only be affected by these indirect things like currency changes, governance changes, that sort of thing, right? That was always kind of the idea from the get-go, simply for the entrenched idea that warfare is just a phenomenal resource sink. And we knew that we needed some sort of, or we thought we needed some massive resource sink to make the game work. And that sort of stuff just works also by sort of motivating players for all the wrong reasons, obviously, to invest those resources. Because at the end of the day, the reason to do so is kind of to fight your opponents in a hostile way. Fight in a hostile way. Is there another way than hostile fighting? Anyway, that's sort of where we started from. And then over the years, as the community grew and the project developed, we more and more realized that's not going to fly with the Prosperous Universe community. And then and ever since we've been we've been iterating on this whole idea, because while military conflict is more or less off the table, I am personally a huge proponent of this faction aspect within the game. I mean, that's the whole reason why we have currencies, which I think is a unique thing that Prosperous Universe has and other games don't. But that really only works or kind of makes sense or kind of shows or can kind of have a visible effect, so to speak, if you have actual different economies, like and if there's differences between these factions. So while we probably won't have this direct military conflict, having different factions promises to bring a lot of dynamic to the game, I think. Especially once you build out all the other stuff around faction politics. I think that stuff could end up being really, really interesting and fun.
Yeah, I think Yulon just said in a chat that factions feel a bit bland and players only identify the currency with it, and that's the main thing we want to change, bringing more flavor into the game. And one thing I just picked up from the chat is about the faction grants. Fabian said it, but it's still in discussion, and we do see the great community benefit of someone asking for a grant, and then corporation discussing with the new player what they want to build and stuff like that. That's all great, and we love that. That's so cool, and we don't want to take that away. But the question is more, where does the money for the grant come from? And as far as I understand it, right now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it comes from players in a corporation, and they give out the grants. But we have just this Monday, I think, discussed how about where the money flows in the universe. So, for example, there are some capital flows that go into the faction, but right now the factions are just a black hole money-wise. And it would be a nice thing to see, to make those capital flows usable, actually, for example, to in form of some form of grants to new players. That doesn't mean that that system might be completely automated or so. It's just the question where the money does come from.
Yeah, and I think the general idea is that over time, and I mean, we're talking a long time here, is to replace more and more of these black boxes where we currently sort of just have money appear or disappear, of replacing those with actual in-game features, however they look. Like But naturally, a lot of that stuff ends up happening somewhere in the realm of politics, I guess. I mean, take a super trivial example that we've discussed several times in the past, and I think the community has sort of made or had ambitions in that direction. What is a starting planet and why? Like, that's one of those examples that would be a great thing to sort of tie to a faction level policy that a player run, player elected government within the game could decide based on their own criteria, basically, and say, okay, in our faction, these are the recommended starting planets, for example. Like, this could be a very low hanging thing. But then again, but then also, for example, they could say, okay, here in Institute Cooperative, the starting budget for a new company is that much, for example. And then suddenly these things that are just constants right now suddenly become dynamic and player controlled, which could be risky and dangerous, but also quite fun, exciting. Not sure what the right word is here.
So one of the questions from Discord earlier was, what's the future for politics? That's the future for politics. We want to see those faction or system councils and make the factions more tangible, more visible.
I mean, an important feature of a full-blown politics system is the ability to remove all checks and balances and become a sole ruler, right?
I'm not sure.
That's for the vision part later.
Sorry.
So there are a handful of smaller features we have on the immediate roadmap, so to speak, that could drop earlier than the faction influence, but it's not decided yet, as we have told you earlier. But since I'm just looking at the questions we received earlier, there was one asking if there could be like a billboard system for the governments, for example, so they could kind of communicate with the players on a certain planet or explain certain decisions, because the motions, while they do have a text field, I don't know if too many players actually read that, or sometimes it's just funny, like starting the party when they are starting a workforce program or immigration program, or stuff like that. So that could be one thing. What else is there? I mean, Fabian has so many game design documents, and actually I'm the bottleneck because I can't implement all of them. So we really have to, we have the luxury to pick almost finished game design documents and just start working on them, with the exception of the current one. But there was an experts rework that we thought about, where experts would more work on a company level and not on a base level.
They could actually move between bases. Imagine that.
Yeah. Then we have the interest groups. It's also a very interesting feature, because players are usually, or lately, asking a lot about corporations and why we neglect them so much, and it's just because we don't have time to make any changes to them. But I would really love to see, to give the corporations more love and give them more features, and make it easier for players to join and kick old players and all that stuff that's basically necessary to run a corporation. And we could improve on that as well. Yeah. I'm not sure how we come to a decision maybe we have to talk about that in the next team meeting. What's coming next?
I mean, for all the small to medium-sized things, there's really no natural order to them. Like you could do all of them at any time.
Yeah.
For all sorts of reasons. Community poll, yeah. That would be one option to get a bearing.
And has also been a question, and it's a topic on the forums as well. Are there any plans to use Rhenium and Krypton for more recipes or more stuff? And I think the answer is yes, right?
Yeah, in fact, we already have ideas to add a few more storage buildings, or more of a variety of storage buildings that, for example, focus on volume or weight or are very big and expensive in general. And some of those already use rhenium in one form or another, or are planned to do so. So yeah, we are looking at expanding the use of the new materials.
Yeah. And new infrastructure projects would certainly require those resources as well in the future.
Yeah.
So should we just go through the list of questions that we have received in advance concerning near future features?
Yep.
Near future features. All right.
Is there going to be a better Steam integration to boost the player count? That was one question. And I think we are almost ready to deploy a new Steam version, right? But it's essentially still just a browser wrapper around the game, and I've looked into it briefly, and I saw no opportunities to install extensions. So there's not going to be rprune. It's not going to be possible in the Steam version, for example. And I'm pretty sure we don't have the time to kind of make the Steam integration, I don't know, to do anything on that front, really. With so many other things to do.
Yeah, I mean, when we had our first stab at this, I think we did have plans for these Steam achievements, for example, to implement that. And it's probably not a massive thing to do, not a small thing either, because it's actually surprisingly hard to kind of implement that properly. But it's just that something that nobody, either on the team or in the community, I guess, feels like it should be something we should spend our time on. Commercially, probably not the wisest choice, but I don't know. It's really hard to gauge how much we would benefit from actually doing that.
Maybe we have to do a little bit at least, because for some players on the Steam storefront says this game hasn't been updated in 3 years or something.
I mean, that's
like
a different story. I mean, that's
and
just Steam being stupid. But yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're working on that. That's why the new version will drop. And then whenever we release something new, we'll also create a new Steam version. Not that it would change anything, but the counter on their side goes up, and they put out a new version. So their algorithm is happy. That's definitely something we're gonna do, because that would be just a lost opportunity otherwise.
Yeah.
And yes, someone said it's just a funnel to the web version. Yes, it is a browser game. It is kind of a funnel. That's true. And the higher player count on Steam would certainly help us with discoverability on Steam. But it's hard to do anything about it. On the one hand, we have the great community that comes along and says, don't play on Steam, get the web version, join this Discord, and install Arprune, and we'll help you getting started in the game. And that's, in my opinion, way better than having one more player on the Steam daily actives count. So yeah.
I mean, I guess if you really want to help out, do the majority of your purchases through the web version, because it's just so much more attractive for us, because we don't have to pay 30% tax to Steam.
Yeah.
But do an occasional purchase on Steam, so they have the revenue, which sort of gives them an indicator that this game is actually generating revenue. Steam likes that. And then maybe just have the Steam client run on the side to rake up numbers. I don't know.
Just make every purchase twice is the...
I would be perfectly happy with that solution, yes.
Oh.
Nah, just kidding.
Andy says he has no idea, but people buy his Steam game just for achievements and cards. Maybe we have to look into Steam cards again. That's nothing. I haven't looked into them.
I never got that. Maybe I'm too old for that.
We looked into achievement and stuff like that, but yeah. Why not?
I wonder how players would, or how that would work for people who actually just play games for the achievements. If they played Prosperous Universe, it might be frustrating for all people involved. Not sure. How old are you guys? Oh, that's an indiscreet question. I'm 28. Yes. And my oldest game is how old again? 22. 23.
You started early.
Yeah. No. I'm 40, if anyone cares. Yeah, so next question. Are we getting close to a universe reset with politics and or electricity updates? Someone said the reset word, the R word. No.
Not close.
Not close. I mean, we touched on the subject earlier, but no, not.
There's no reset in sight.
It would make a lot of things easier. It might actually bring back a whole lot of players that we had earlier that might find this attractive to come back to a new universe. I mean, because we do have, 120, 130,000 accounts for Prosperous Universe. I mean, I see the numbers. It must be more than that, because I mostly see the number in my day-to-day work when we send out a newsletter, and then I see how many recipients we have, and that amount is usually around 120,000, but that's only the ones with an email address, right? And the active ones. So kind of reactivating a good part of that crowd would be incredible, but yeah, not ready for a reset, especially because at this point, I mentioned those markers in our code base earlier. Like, if we were to start working on all of these things, we would probably be busy for a year, just working on things that we delayed for post reset. So not going to happen anytime soon. And electricity, or the energy system, I mean, it's a cool system. Like all the others, we have the game design documents for it more or less ready, but it's one of the bigger ones. So I think, I mean, please interrupt me if I'm wrong, but I think it's one of those things that will have to wait until we've finished a few more small and medium-sized things, I guess. Yeah. And it's also, actually, I mean, is it a post-reset feature?
I mean, it would make sense, but I think we discussed the idea of like a staggered release, so that it doesn't like shut down your base from one day to another because you have no energy, because yesterday there was no energy in the game. Like that should of course not happen, but yeah, it would require some extra work to make it work in a running universe, basically.
Yeah.
Are there any plans for reworking in-game chat systems? Like mentioning someone would actually create a notification. Also, fun anecdote from Prosperous Universe development history. The very first sort of Hello World that later morphed into what Prosperous Universe is today, technically, from a technical point of view, was a chat. I think that's the first thing we wrote. You had a little chat window and you can send a message to someone else, because that was sort of our what's it called? Yeah, it was a walking skeleton, right? Because it had all the bits and pieces that you needed. Like it had authentication, it had a user, it had different entities sending messages to each other between nodes, and then something happened on the client on the other end. So that was kind of our first proof of concept. Sadly, a lot of the chat infrastructure we have in the game these days did not evolve that far beyond that initial prototype. I mean, I'm exaggerating. There's a lot more going on these days, but yeah, I think it could use some love. Not sure whether we have a roadmap item for that, but I think we definitely discussed the visibility of, or the usability of in-game chats at some point in the past. Yeah. And I think we discussed the bulletin board stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or is there... Then this next question has all these material abbreviations. I can't answer that. I don't know what that means.
We already talked about that.
Okay, good. And then there's a comment on the storefronts. That's a lot of questions. I think we probably would have to have a general introduction on what storefronts actually are supposed to be.
I think specifically for the one who asked this, like there's the question, will storefronts be able to buy and sell the same item at different prices? And the answer is yes, because storefronts are basically supposed to be as flexible as possible, and you just make your own storefront basically, so you can put any commodities in there with any price and on the buying and selling side, and yeah, it's up to you.
Where the commodity exchanges is it a double-sided order book? What's the technical term? I think the storefronts are basically just a one-sided one. Like one party determines the price, and the other side can decide whether they buy it or not. But there's no.
You gotta go to a different store if you don't want
exactly.
to pay it.
That's the idea.
Bob No Brain asks, do you guys use Figma or something for UI design?
I've been doing that for a few weeks now, but only for Airline Sim, sadly. Although I already told Michi that it would be really useful to use that for Prosperous Universe as well, after you've done the groundwork of kind of trading your components and stuff.
Yeah.
It would also be very helpful for Fabian, to be honest, kind of to make the process of wireframing easier and kind of whipping up like mockups for features and stuff. Especially with Prosperous Universe, where we basically built the whole UI from what is like 5 components.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Prosperous Universe team is waiting for the Airline Sim team for feedback how Figma works and
so far it doesn't work well. It doesn't work too well so far, but that's not Figma. That's my inability to do design, but different story. Here, Twisted Negative. Start a small gas station on some barren rock in the outer rim. That's the spirit. Like that's exactly what this thing is, I guess.
It's another infrastructure idea, by the way.
Oh
gas
yeah, that's
station.
true. Gas station.
Yeah. Keyboard shortcuts. I want to use my VI motions in Prosperous Universe.
What about asteroid mining? Yeah, it's on the roadmap, but we've talked so many times about asteroid mining, and I think that's actually one of the things we don't have a design document for, right? A game design document.
Not
because,
really, no.
It's difficult. It's really difficult.
We haven't even agreed on what the term even means.
Yeah.
Like what sort of feature it's supposed to be. I mean, yeah, asteroid mining is kind of is a sci-fi trope. You would expect it to be there, but so far I think we haven't really made any progress
No.
on making it a useful feature in any sense. Like,
Is there any plans to allow plot expansion on full planets? Yes, that's a point in the benefits sheet for system councils, or at least one idea. I think I'm more or less one of the last defenders of the plot system in the company. Yeah, maybe we see some changes there.
I mean, also, I mean, we again 10 years. It's been a long time, and the original ideas and the vision going forward have shifted, right? But one has to sort of keep in mind why the plots exist in the first place, because like early on we had this idea or this worry that, and I mean that's still a thing, right? Like the whole reason why you have bases and limits on bases and all that sort of stuff is that if we didn't have that, then it would be a limitless universe and things start to become sort of dull if there are no limits that you can hit. Like limits are a good thing. So, and that's where this plot idea came from, because we said we sort of need to limit the amount of space available on a planet. Otherwise, you need one ideal planet for a particular resource, and then you just build that up to infinity, and all other planets with that resource on it would become irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in an extreme case, that's sort of the idea. And of course, given that conflict or military conflict was still very much a design goal back then, having limited space would of course also fuel this conflict, right? And while some of these things haven't gone away, others have. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay, the chat is getting more active now. We need a moderator or assistant who reads the comments on the chat and then funnels the good ones to us. Depleted resources? That's scary. That's another idea that's been floated once or twice. All our comments are good, yes. Yeah, I mean that was our list of pre-curated questions, I think, for near future features. Are there any other concrete questions regarding these things? Are we going to expand the header, Michi?
We can, yeah. We can do that. Please post a picture on Discord or better in the forums, and I'll create a ticket for it. We can look into that.
Quality of life features priority. I mean, yeah, you are going to work on several small things in the near future, right? I mean, that's typically our mode of operation, that after a big release has come out, we sort of take off the rough edges and then do a bit of maintenance for a while before
Yeah.
getting started on the next big thing. So,
I'm pretty sure since the holidays are just 4 weeks away or so, that we won't start a big feature before that, right?
yeah. What about trade routes? Yeah, what about them? I mean, it's one of those features that has a complete design document, I think. I think it's pretty much there. I mean, Fabian, I think you have best grasp on what's in there at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think more or less what you would expect, like automation for shipping routes, basically, where you can specify certain steps that will be repeated by your ships automatically, and they will land somewhere, try to pick up commodity X, Y, and Z, and then fly somewhere else and unload them and do that perpetually, basically. That's like the basic core thing that's in there. And yeah, I don't know if that's something that fits in before the holidays.
Most likely not, but yeah, that would be a nice feature. I would love implementing that.
Wasn't that the design document for which I forced you to play Anno, Michi?
Yeah, it was.
Or not forcing is the wrong word. Strongly recommended. Try
Yeah.
Anno.
Andy asks, Fabian mentioned other uses for RE, opinions on an MM, on a market maker item using Rhenium. Yeah, maybe.
It seems like a band-aid to making it more useful.
Yeah, at least for now,
then you
right?
can just sell it.
Before all the other things are getting implemented that depend on Rhenium, it could be like a stopgap measure to keep at least a few of those bases afloat. But the difficulty I see is because Rhenium is, I think, only available in the new sectors, right? So it's really difficult to ship it out somehow, or it's costly at least. Would be to find a value that the market maker would pay for Rhenium.
Nick asks the question I've been waiting for: shipping ads, but in reverse. And because I think I mentioned it the other day on Discord, and then I said I'm definitely going to bring that up on this live stream, because this whole shipping topic is obviously very close to my heart, given that I started this whole thing with airline sim and I actually studied logistics in a past life. And fun fact about the origins of Prosperous Universe: the original design document, which I think I wrote in LaTeX, for Prosperous Universe, or a Prosperous Universe-like thing. Actually, back then it was called Ecosim, which is still the technical name of Prosperous Universe in the code base. Like everything in the code base is called Ecosim, not Prosperous Universe. The original motivation was basically I wanted to have a simulated economy so that I could have real shipping. That was basically the whole thing why I started this, or why I had this idea, because I felt like the traffic or traffic demand in airline sim was always artificial. I mean, it's modeled after real world numbers, right? But it's still artificially generated. And I was always sort of intrigued by this idea of sort of having a shipping line in reality, so to speak, like with other players booking my transport capacity. Like that was always sort of the idea. So that's definitely something that I would love to see in Prosperous Universe eventually.
Yeah.
Like where you could basically say, okay, I'm starting a space line now, and I have scheduled services between planets. Maybe I even have like connections where I have like a central hub where I transfer cargo from one ship to another and then ship it somewhere else, and have like a generalized interface where everyone else can book these capacities. And that would be my dream come true. That would be just amazing. But it's going to be a few more years, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that's not even on the roadmap, right? I think it's not.
Not right now. No.
It's one of those aspirational things.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things I'm going to do when I retire.
Someone asks,
Logistics profession.
any opinions on ship-to-ship item transfers? Like between two separate players or between the same player? I'm not sure I'm getting the question. ECD. No, it's not coming this universe. Oh, wait, no, that's our premium currency. You can buy it.
Hey,
Only $10.99.
no. I'm not doing that. Those are called crystals.
Right. Right now we're not running any ads. Bob No Brain asks if we're running any ads.
Sam's place, so you can have one. Yeah. Not sure what a simple reverse shipping ad would entail. Because I guess you could sort of just offer a given amount of capacity on a given relation, and that's it. I don't know, maybe.
Population migration. That's another big topic, no? It's your favorite, or it's population simulation actually, where you have not just the workforce but real population where the workforce is being recruited from. And that people would have to fly from planet to planet. Yeah, that's then.
Yeah, but the whole thing about population migration, that's a natural thought that occurs when thinking about this, but it's always one that I always immediately reject because, come on. It's maybe too much.
No.
That would be one of the things that I would probably not like for Prosperous Universe because it feels artificial. Which is weird because population simulation, the way I imagine it, is of course artificial. But then having sort of passenger transport within the game just to have passenger transport feels weird. Like it's not sure why one would do that. Yeah, just put them in containers. Yeah. We abstract that away. They have very good life support systems, these controllers. No, you can have an air-conditioned container. It's fine. It can be really nice in your stasis pod. Anyway, I think Michi wants me to shut up now and end the stream. It's getting sort of late here, so I'm going to do that. How much time for vision statements do I have, Michi? 5 more minutes?
Maybe, yeah.
All right. Who am I to talk about airlines in vision? Like Prosperous Airlines in, right? Now we talked about so much about shipping. Airlines in mindset, no. Yeah, I think one thing, as Michi mentioned earlier, that we're pretty sure about is that while we've been doing this for 10 years, we're pretty sure we're going to do it for another 10 or even more. The scary thing here is that we're approaching an age at which we have to think about whether we're going to finish all the stuff we want to do before retirement, and not as a joke, but literally. Like, it's take that amount times 2 and then you're basically retiring. So yeah, there's a long roadmap that we have already spec'd out. One thing that I would personally like to sort of highlight or mention again, I think I has already touched a bit on it when I talked about the early plans for stuff like conflict, for example, is that because we work so slow for all sorts of reasons, it sometimes becomes hard for us as a team as well, but especially, of course, for the communities to sort of kind of see the big picture of kind of where we're going and why we're doing certain things. And that's a bit frustrating, but at the same time, motivating as well, that there is a bigger picture, like there is a vision for this game, which essentially is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michi, but basically it's supposed to be a universe or economy simulation sandbox, right? So at the end of the day, what we want to have is we want to have this player-driven universe with a whole bunch of tools that allows players to basically run things the way they see fit. All within a structure. Like, I mean, this is probably always one of the hardest trade-offs. Like contracts, for example, custom contracts, they're super flexible. They allow you to do a whole lot of things, but like doing them at scale is super cumbersome, of course. So then these systems, or the need for certain systems, emerges, and then kind of we're going to provide those tools, of course. But that's basically the idea, that at the end of the day, you could have one faction that runs things in one way, and you have another faction that runs things in another way. But how it's done exactly is sort of the player's choice, right? But that's sort of the idea. Yeah, I think that's the key. Yeah. That's the key for the next 10 years. Like, there would be a few more things that I personally would like, but I just know how much we can do. Yeah, I'd love to see the game grow so much that you guys can hire more people. Oh yeah, totally. We would love that as well. And I mean,
everything so much easier.
Yeah, not everything, but many things.
Many things, yeah.
I mean, for various reasons. I mean, I highlighted, or I mentioned this other airline specific video for a bit of background, but we've been on a bit of a slow burn since the last funding project ended. So we've like the smallest team size that we've been for a very long time now. And it's definitely the idea to grow that again. We have no idea yet, no concrete idea anyway, how to do that, but it's definitely something that we want to tackle again over the next 1 or 2 years.
Yep.
Well,
all right.
Any other closing words from you guys?
I have none. Just a thank you to the community.
Yes.
It's a pleasure.
I second that. All right.
Right. Well then, until next time, right?
Let's get our hot milk off to bed.
Bye.